Welcome to Noel's Good Friend Show. I'm your host, Noel. It's a show where I invite my friends to talk about friendship, how to meet new people, and how to be a good friend. Today's episode is called Long Lost Friends, and it's all about reconnecting with friends we've lost touch with over time. Here to join me back on the show is playwright, marketing leader, and my very best friend, Mareya. Hey, Mareya, welcome back to the show.
Hi.
So I wanted to do this episode because after our first episode aired, there were so many people that had reached out and were interested in what we had dubbed the lost years. You know, that period of our of our lives where we kind of lost touch for a little bit, and then we kind of reconnected a little bit later in life, and that kind of deepened our friendship. So
Yeah, love it.
just to kind of set the scene, Maria and I went to high school together, and then after we graduated, she went to school in Florida, and then I moved to a different part of Maryland. So I guess my first question for you was, what were you up to in that time after we graduated high school?
Yeah, so obviously one of the big things, there's two big things actually that kind of formed my separation in a sense from all of
Mm,
my friends that I'd grown up with, gone to school with. The first big thing was that I decided to go to school in Orlando, Florida, and we grew up in Maryland, so that's a big distance. Long distance friendships, especially at that time, are already a little bit hard to maintain. Obviously, we had social media, obviously, we had iPhones and FaceTime, but it wasn't as easy as it is post pandemic world. But another really big piece was during high school, I was in this very bizarre relationship. It was one of those relationships that a lot of my friends were not necessarily, you included,
mm,
were not necessarily, really invested in and didn't really love me in it.
mhm,
And so when I finally faced the reality of it was a bad relationship, especially that kind of coincided with me moving to Orlando, I broke all ties. I just broke all
mm,
ties from anything that existed prior to me moving to Orlando because it was really painful. And
mm,
I also didn't know where everybody stood. I felt
mm,
uncomfortable because anytime that I felt like addressing like an old friend, I was like, oh, they're going to be like, I told you so. And
mm.
I just didn't want to hear that because I was already just dealing with so much. So in my 18, 19-year-old brain, I was like, you know what's better? Just shutting everybody out. Um,
Mhm,
I think that you and we've discussed that it did affect some things with us, and it wasn't that I had any animosity towards you. I
mhm,
just had just uncomfortable feelings towards everything that related to, you know, that relationship, me prior to Orlando.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, we've discussed this before between just you and I is on the other side, right? As Maria moves to Florida, like I moved to a different part of Maryland. And so in my perspective, I just thought that we became a little bit more distant purely out of like college reasons. I was not privy to the idea that she had like severed ties with pretty much everybody from high school. And, just like moving, I was honestly moving through the world still really thinking that you and I were best friends. It was just that we were just not in each other's like space and time. And so
Yeah.
I think what's interesting about that is that it speaks on like a philosophy around friendship where I don't know I mean, I could psychoanalyze myself and figure out why it is that I think the way that I do, but the short of it is like I often think that the closeness of friendship has less to do with like how much time you spend and instead about the access to the information and the kind of degree of intimacy that you have with the person. So I didn't really think too much that our friendship had changed. It's just that we weren't in the same space because I knew that the minute you were back in my life, you were privy to all information that I would have given you,
Yeah.
prior to that, which kind of leads me from your perspective. And at that time, did you think that our friendship was over?
I think I think for a little bit I did. I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
maybe those first few
Hmm.
years because again, I had made this decision, just cut it all off. I'm not
Hmm.
in my
Hmm.
mind, it was a trickle down effect.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the relationship I had
Okay,
with that boy.
Reagan. I didn't know I was talking to Reagan over here.
So political.
Go on.
But
Mm,
no, it felt like a trickle down effect in the sense of like anything that related to that guy related
mm,
to everybody else. So again, if I'm cutting all ties with him, everybody else fades away. And
yeah.
so again, I think that it was one of those decisions that I made for the well-being of my mental health for
Mm.
the separation from him. And
Yeah,
I just felt like it was collateral damage at that point.
totally.
And so I think, yeah, for those first, couple years, I was like, I definitely cherish those memories that we had. And I wish, somebody like you well, and especially you were one of my
Mm.
closest friends in high school, and I still stalked you. I still was watching you.
Like, I see you.
I was watching you.
Uh-huh.
And I did. And actually, there were many moments where I was like, oh my God, he's doing so well. It looks like he's, living a pretty, fulfilling
Mm-hmm.
life. And I think also at that small point, too, it got a little awkward at that point. So,
Hmm.
fast forward 2, 3 years, we didn't really talk. I was like, okay,
Yeah,
now it's weird. Now it's
yeah,
so
yeah.
super weird if I'm just like, hey,
Right,
remember
right.
me?
No, there's something to that. And to me, if you had reached out to me at any point in that time, I would have been totally fine. But
Hmm.
again, I also, there's a way I perceive and think of friendship for myself and how I receive it. But then I also, I think, was party to that same thing too, where like, I don't know if you thought of us in the same way. So I thought it might have been weird to reach out at that point.
Yeah.
Uh, Fast forward, from your point of view, how did we reconnect? What was your version of that
Okay.
story?
Oh my gosh. Because my version, again, because I was aware of the separation, probably a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more than you were. Again, I kind of was trying to see if like, is there a space? Is there an opportunity? Because I think especially as like that pandemic hit and people were starting
Mm-hmm.
to do that thing of rekindling some friendships and rekindling
Mm-hmm.
relationships, I was kind of in this space of I think I'd love to reconnect to my roots. I think I would love to get to and spoiler alert, I didn't have the best friends at the time either. So
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely was needing a rooted, strong friend. I had been following you on social media and I had seen that you were like, oh gosh, what was it called? The pity party. You were like Noel's pity party. And at the time, I also wanted to throw a pity party. I was like, I have no friends. I have no boyfriend. I have no job.
So, for some context, back in the beginning of 2021, I went through a breakup, and then I was just like filled with like kinetic energy, and I tend to feel that way whenever I'm going through a breakup. Is that I just needed to like mobilize myself in what way? Usually, I express it through my creativity, and so I started thinking about like, oh, what would make me feel better in this moment. And I think about the things we say to people when they're going through like a tough time. When we're trying to give them tough love, it's like people say like, "Well, what do you want us to do? Throw you a pity party?" And I was kind of like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
I throw me a pity party."
I
and so
deserve it.
and so pity party is basically I created this entire branding system and campaign to advertise an Instagram live show called the Pity Party, which is kind of a precursor to this show, which I mentioned in the first episode. And basically, I went on Instagram Live with my then roommate, and basically, we made banana bread.
You
On
did.
it's We were making banana bread, and I was just talking about my breakup. My original plan was just that we were gonna be on Instagram Live and making this banana bread, and it was just her and I talking. But
Yeah,
then she was really focused on the banana bread. And so I didn't really know what to make of it. So I started inviting people to get on the Instagram Live. And Mareya just so happened to be one of the people who got on. And so
yeah.
we had like a really, really good conversation. We caught up. I told you about things happening in my life. You told me things about
Hmm.
happening in yours. And I initially thought like, that was really nice. Like it was really nice
Hmm.
that, I got to catch up with her. And then slowly, in the year that followed, like we started communicating like little by little. And it was like, it wasn't super quick. It was like,
No,
we'd
it
go
took some
from,
time.
yeah, yeah. It was like within that, after that first year, all of 2021, I
Hmm.
think we maybe were calling each other like once every 2 months or something like
Hmm.
that,
Hmm. Yeah,
And then it slowly started building up in like frequency until like, I mean, nowadays I call you like every other day,
pretty much.
essentially.
Like if we're not communicating, like, are you okay? Did you
Right,
die?
right. They would text like, is everything good? Like, So question, was it awkward when we first got back in touch? And what was the moment that you felt like we were part of each other's lives again?
So again, I feel like it was a stepping stone. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that it was immediate. We were starting to talk a little bit more frequently and we were communicating. We were starting to FaceTime a little bit more. And you started becoming part of almost my rotation of like friends that I would catch up with. Um, but I really distinctly remember it was very incredibly random. You were like, this is so strange, but I found a like $30 flight to Orlando. I need to get out of the city.
Yeah,
Can I come? And I was like,
totally.
hell yeah.
Yeah.
I remember being so excited because again, I had been missing you at that stage in my life,
Mm.
and every time that we did like get on a FaceTime and every time we were talking, I got that like again it's like dating where I was like,
Yeah.
oh, he's texting me, oh, he's calling me.
Yeah, and I think good in a good dating way, which is like
Hmm.
slowly building up in closeness, you know what I mean? Versus kind of like
Exactly.
love bombing or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And though it did feel natural and it did feel like we were, it wasn't hard, but
Hmm.
that's a good key way to say this. It wasn't difficult, but it still
Hmm.
was gradual. And I think that that's
Yeah,
important to say that it was awkward at first. It was
totally.
a
So yeah,
little
yeah.
uncomfortable.
Um, what was there anything that surprised you about how similar or how different we were when we got back together?
The similar is really what surprised me. I think you would think after
Hmm.
what, 5, 6 years, you're like, who is this person? What,
Yeah,
what,
yeah.
what are they about? And I think the similarity is what kind of gagged me. I was like, wait a second, this is the same like guy that I literally like talked to 6 years. Like it felt like we had quite literally done like a time jump. Like if our life was
Hmm.
a movie, it was just cutting to it.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
same
yeah, yeah.
character, same cast.
Or,
So
they do it in the movie magic where like it's the same cast and they clearly filmed it within days, but they just gave them a different haircut.
right. Exactly. Like yeah, you had like the buzz cut and I was
Yeah.
like physically you looked a little bit different,
Hmm.
but in personality it was like
Yeah.
almost exactly the same. I think there was just a couple of nuances that were a little bit different. Especially and I really want to talk about this because I
Hmm.
was so impressed. Because I knew you in high school and right before we kind of had our friendship breakup, you hadn't come out yet. So for
Hmm.
most of our friendship, that was
Yeah.
more of, and we've kind of referenced this before, but that was more of an internal unspoken thing.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so I was used to navigating you with your personality, like kind of skating around that.
Hmm.
Whereas this time I got to see you living your open, free, best life.
Hmm.
And to me, I was so impressed because I was like, oh my God,
He's blossomed.
it's blossom. And no, genuinely, like that's something like that was probably the only difference though, because otherwise you were the same. You were the same.
No, and let's get into the sameness. Right. For me too, like, my trip to Orlando was also the moment that I felt like, we really kind of locked in and like reconnected. There's this particular moment that, like there was a lot of things that happened in between like high school and when we reconnected again, like some really like traumatizing things I went through in college that I was really scared had fundamentally altered who I was. I was afraid that you would see me and I felt like I was, and I just seemed like a husk of the person that you knew me as from high school, which I really liked who I was in high school, all things considered. And so there was this particular moment we were driving to Disney and then we were having this conversation and we were cracking jokes. And then I like heard myself as if I wasn't us, as if I was another person listening to you and me talk. And then I heard it as if, and I distinctly remember it sounding just like how we were in high school when my dad would pick us up after, rehearsals. And it was the way we were talking, the way we were joking around. It gave me such relief. And, it was almost like, with as much fear as I had that I might have changed so much, it actually was the complete opposite experience. I found it so eerie how much we sounded the same. And it's something to be said about like liking a version of yourself and feeling like you've lost it. And this person who, in her being herself and just being in your life during this particular period, is able to kind of preserve that piece. And, in a sense, you walk through life with that version of me with you at all times. And, so when I reconnected with you, it feels like you gave that person back to me, and that is probably one of the most beautiful things that a friend has ever done for me. whether or not you even realized it.
I know I don't really express this all the time, but it was very similar to, and for me, I think subconsciously, I wasn't aware that that was like kind of the goal of me trying to get back to a little bit of a root of myself. But upon like, you know, having that experience with you, I also felt like after you had left, I was like, wow, I feel so refreshed. Like I was missing the strength of that teenage girl. Again, I had distanced myself from the teenage version of myself. I think that I thought I was
Mm.
distancing myself from the friends and the relationship, but in a way I think that I was so embarrassed of my like teenage self, and it wasn't until I reconnected with you that I was like, there's nothing to be embarrassed about from her. She was actually so amazing. And there's so many pieces of her that I really needed to remind myself are still part of me and still always should be parts of me. So
It's gonna be so emotional, right?
I know I was gonna say.
No, I think to what your point was like, oh my God, like you in high school, you were so incredible. You were such like a superstar, and you already figured it out. Ultimately, I understand like feeling like that is one and the same, right? Who you were in high school as it relates to that partner. But I think from our perspective, and I already told you this, we never thought you were a reflection of that person. You know what I
I
mean? It's
know.
like an
Yeah.
unmooring of you from that person was honestly what we wanted because we knew you were so wonderful. You know what I mean? So, and that was true then and it's true now, you know. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more Mareya on Noel's Good Friend Show. Welcome back. I'm here with my best friend Mareya on Noel's Good Friend Show. Today we're talking about long lost friends. What are some of the biggest reasons people lose touch with friends in your experience?
I really
Mhm.
think that a lot of the reasons that people lose touch is because they're just not fitting together
Mhm.
anymore. Whether or not that's like the exact circumstance that they're in, that could be the job you're in, the college you go to, the neighborhood you move to. A lot of those factors can definitely influence that. But I think really what it is a testament to is who you are as a person. And so,
Mhm.
we always are ever evolving as people, and as friends. So I think that because of that, there are moments in time where like it's square peg, round hole,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just not really working out anymore. It really just depends on, where you're at in life at the time.
How do you know when a friendship is over for good versus when it's just in hibernation?
That's a hard one.
That's a tough one, right?
Especially from my perspective, because
Mm-hmm.
I think I assume that it's over for good. I'll tell you why it's hard for me to tell. I am personally open to reconnecting with very close to everybody. There's probably a select 5 people that I'm like, never again would I give you a second chance.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody else always has the opportunity to come back into my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's something that like, that's just a personality trait of mine. So again, I think in the immediate now, I think, oh, this is over for good. I'll never talk to that person again.
Mm-hmm.
But then 2 to 3 years later, I'm like, well, if we
Yeah.
work out, I'm open to it.
Yeah, to me, it's like, that's a really interesting question because usually it's conflict. Conflict is usually the thing that brings like a friend kind of separation for me. And the thing is, I've come to a better understanding of myself now. The short of it is I will not know on the outset whether or not the friend breakup is temporary or permanent. When I'm hurt, I'm hurt. And like in that time frame when I'm hurt, you cannot reconcile with me. It's just the doors are a little bit locked. Once I'm over something, I am over something. And so
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people who, may feel like we're not reconnected or whatever, you just have to wait.
Yeah.
I will get over it and we can reconcile. Truly.
Mhm.
How much of friendship is about timing? Have you ever felt like a friendship had to end or pause because the timing was off? Like, I think if you don't mind me, jumping into
Yeah.
this,
No,
like,
spearhead it.
I feel like I guess for us the timing was off. We just didn't think about it in those terms. It just like
Exactly.
naturally kind of just like took its pause. But then
Yeah.
as soon I think as the universe deemed us ready to be like present in each other's life, it like worked its own magic at the end. So that's Yeah, I
100%. I 100% agree. It is. But that's not going to say that timing is 100% wrong and that's why you cannot be friends with that person. I don't believe that part. So
yeah.
timing plays a role, but it's not the make or break.
Yeah. I mean, the right timing is not gonna suit any true incompatibility with the universe.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you really are not each other's like girls, like then you're just not each other's girls. You know.
Exactly.
What's something you've learned about friendship from the ones that have come back into your life?
Again, you're my favorite example of this. I really think that proximity is not always an issue. And I think that that's the biggest thing I learned reconnecting with you is that I think again, there was a variety of reasons why the friendship took a pause. But again, in my mind, a big piece of that, like I said in the beginning, was the proximity piece. I'm moving hundreds, if not thousands of miles away. There's no way we could be friends. Rekindling with
Florida's not
you.
that far, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm really bad at geography.
It's not thousands of miles away. Geography was not this.
It is hundreds. It's not thousands.
Okay, that.
Rekindling with you again, it really just taught me like, okay, cool, you're in New York. Guess what? We literally are just as close as we were when I was seeing you in third, fifth, and sixth period, you know?
Right.
So that's one of my big takeaways. And actually a couple of other friends that I've rekindled friendships with, it's the same thing because a lot of that preconceived notion of if you don't live in the same state, you don't live in the same city, how can you be friends? You can.
I mean, like to the rekindlers or aspiring rekindlers out there, it was very specific the time in history where you and I reconnected. It was like right out of the pandemic. It's that it was around the time that we, first of all, like, you know, remote work was starting to become more popular. The way of like relating and communicating with people through these different technologies that have been around for a couple of years, but I don't think we were really truly capitalizing on to the best of our ability. I guess what I'm trying to say by saying that is that if there was ever a time to try and reconnect with friends, just from like a material standpoint, right? Like the ability to do so. Like there was a period, if you wanted to reconnect, you know, with your friend way back when, you had to like write a letter or whatever. Yeah. You don't even have to do all that. You know what I mean? You could just find somebody on social media, get a little conversation going, have a little FaceTime. There's so many ways to, you know, if you so choose to, so many ways to rekindle friendships, maintain friendships that are farther away from you, like in proximity. And yeah, I just really hope that people kind of make use of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really am an advocate for it. I think that we're so wrapped up in sometimes being embarrassed by, like I said, it is awkward. You are gonna have to go out and do the awkward thing of reaching out.
If I could put words to this, like vulnerability is the price of being in a relationship with others. You know what I mean? Like it is the price that we all have to pay. The embarrassment, the feeling like, oh, what if they won't be receptive? It's the price that you pay, but it's a currency you always have. You know what I mean?
I love that. That is 100% true.
You know what I mean? You're never going to be bankrupt from vulnerability. Like maybe a desire and a sense of motivation or like the courage, maybe you like have to work that up, but you always have the capacity. Like it is a human capability to be vulnerable and to connect with others. You always have that in you.
Yeah.
You know? What's the first thing you say when you reconnect with a long lost friend?
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a really interesting question. I don't think there's necessarily a script to it.
No, a couple of times I've used like almost like, hey, this is so random, but I totally like thought of you the other day because of XYZ. You know, that's a good way to do it. I feel like another way that I've gone about it is if I'm like on their social media and I see like something on their story, you know what? I'll give that story a little swipe up. Like, oh my God, that, you know, again, reminds me of this. There's so many ways to be friendly when you really want to be. And hey, unless you're a total jackass, you're not going to reject that. So
yeah. You could also very easily just go, what up, toots? I'm kidding. You know, people have done this to me and I've always been just receptive for it, but because I'm like, I'm down for whatever, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I think that sometimes people do this thing when they haven't reached out to somebody and they're holding a lot of guilt. They send that really long paragraph with like a lot of details and a lot of like, you know, maybe feelings of regret and all these things. Like, I say you don't have to do that. You can if you want, but I'm saying I'm gonna go as far as like, uh, try not to come into it too regretful and, you know, apologetic, or, you know, especially if there's no real like conflict that happened, so to speak.
Right.
But I really, from our experience, the one thing I really do want to suggest is like that incremental. I totally agree with like, hey, I just thought about you, and I remember this one time that whatever you used to. There's this one girl that I used to go to college with, and she used to have the money that you get on your little kind of student card.
Yeah.
And so she would. I just remember that she used to buy me Frosted Flakes from the little cafe, like during our drawing class. And yeah, it's like stuff like that I just really remember. People love hearing about the times that they were kind to you. Like, I always appreciate that
No,
when people tell me
honestly,
that.
I wish I got it more. Like,
Mhm. Right, because I'm so nice, and people aren't thanking me. No, I'm just kidding.
No, because like I want to hear what reminds you of me. Like
Mhm.
because I'm so curious, and
Mhm.
again, it's less about the needing you to acknowledge what you did wrong or you think you
Mhm.
did wrong, or
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
quite literally tell me that you saw a duck and you remembered something about me because of that duck. Like I eat that up, and I think most people do, because that is just so you're bringing on a memory, you're bringing on personality traits, you're bringing up something funny potentially,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everybody wants to hear those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think, start incremental, start light, start
Mhm.
light. You know,
Yeah.
a little appetizer, a little amuse bouche.
Yeah. Don't serve them an 18-pound
Yeah, yeah,
porterhouse
like
steak.
oh, rack a lamb. like let's dial this back a little.
Yeah.
How do you, or should you, or whatever, like, how do you acknowledge the time that's passed between you two without making it awkward? I don't think you need to, personally.
I don't think you need to, unless, again, there's that caveat
Mhm.
sometimes, unless you do know that
Yeah.
you know that they know that something did happen, and it is
Mm-hmm.
something that you should address. I
Yeah.
think that you're right. A lot of those instances you don't. There's so
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
times where, especially if enough time has passed, but if you
Mm.
both know that there was a big thing that did happen between the two of you and you just kind of want to clear the space,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that that's okay to acknowledge, because you
Yeah.
want,
Totally.
especially if you're really trying to restart a solid foundation, you want to just make sure that there's still no weird tension between the two of
Mhm.
you.
I mean, like for me, the times I've reconnected with people who I've had conflict with, yeah, it's like I'd be like, hey, how you been? Pretty good. Da da da. Like da da da. I know things didn't quite end well the last time we talked, and I was
Yeah.
wondering if you were down to talk about it. I had an old therapist tell me this once. Sometimes it's okay to start by having a conversation about the conversation itself. So instead of like, hey, address the thing right away, it's like, hey, things didn't quite end well the last time. Would you be okay to talk about it?
Actually, that's
You know?
so important, actually, because not everybody is in that headspace, especially if you're the one
Mhm.
reaching out. If you're the one
Yeah.
reaching out and you know that there's a thing, be careful, because like what if that
Yeah.
person is really not in that headspace? You
Yeah.
don't want to bombard that, because then you might drive them away again. So there's like, oh my God, you're
And
so
the thing is, yeah, you might drive them away thinking that it was you trying to reach out, and totally not. You could have just been, they could have just been dealing with something on their own, and they just didn't have the bandwidth to, maybe address this thing in the here and now.
yeah.
But yeah, like I just try not to go into too much right away.
Yeah.
Um, have you ever reconnected with a friend and realized they had completely changed, or that you had, and how do you navigate that?
Yes, I
Mhm.
have. Um, it has
Uh,
happened. Um, I'm a very I'm a very friendly, like flexible, forgiving
mhm,
person, and a lot of those times that that has happened, it's kind of something that I clock in my brain. I clock,
mhm,
ooh, I just don't know if this is somebody that I really can actively, presently be friends with still. I cherish those memories.
mhm.
I, I'm fine with a occasional walk down memory lane with that person, but the people that we are today is just not going to be conducive to an actual friendship. And so, I kind of keep those situations a little bit more surface level.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't necessarily think that it needs to be like, oh my God, no, we can't be friends at all. Like,
Back up. Yeah, there's a previous episode where you talk about not every person has to come into your life and be like your bestest friend. And so, yeah, what we're offering here is that somebody can come back into your life, but they don't have to take on the exact same place that they did in your life before. I just think that readjusting how you relate to them, even while still like rekindling things, I think that's perfectly fine. You know what I mean? Because your needs have shifted, your being has shifted.
It is always going to be a little bit different because we
Totally.
are different people now. I don't want it to ever be one of those things where I'm looking at this from the lens of different equals bad. Different is literally just different. Just like you wouldn't have been the same if you stayed friends the entire time as well. Like, you're always going to be ever evolving.
I think we're forgetting to acknowledge that different can also be better. Say for those relationships where you have to kind of readjust where they place in your life. I mean, sometimes you might find after reconnecting with somebody is that you probably shouldn't have been as close as you were before. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, I actually placed you way too close than it needed to be. The hope is that we keep getting better and keep becoming more mature and be better at navigating. So like, if your friendship doesn't look the same as it was before, ideally it should be better. Do you think friendships are shaped more by choice or by fate?
I gotta say, I think it's fate. I really do.
Me too.
I think we think we're making choices, but we're not. And I think that me and you is the strongest testament to that. Because again, how do you go from not speaking at all for like 5 to 6 years to being almost exactly back to where you were long distance too? Like let's really like acknowledge that like, I'm so sorry, but like you really had no choice in being my friend.
No, I mean like in the most literal sense in the first place, right? Like from when we first became friends, it's like we just ended up in the same, like, same classes with the same interests. Like I went to a different high school my freshman year, and then I transferred into the school that Mareya and I ended up going to and graduated from. I mean, to your point about the fate element of it, it's not just about how we met and how we maintained and how we were connected. That is already a very, very strong case there, right? The other thing too is that we had very unique upbringings from each other, right? Like I grew up in the Philippines, moved to America, moved around, had, gay, like all these like unique set of experiences, and so did you. But the point is, I do feel like life, our childhoods had shaped us in such a way that we were able to help one another in high school, and then separated us, made us go through very similar things. That's the weird thing too. In the lost years, in that time when Mareya and I are apart, and as we're still kind of like learning a little bit of like what happened in that gap. And what we keep finding is that we were like going through very, very similar things with obviously our own cast of characters within our respective spaces. But it has shaped us to have like very similar perspectives on life, so that by the time we reconnected, it's like we were very similar when we were in high school. And also the people that came out of those years where we weren't in touch also grew to be very similar people, which is strange, frankly.
It actually, like, when you get really meta about this, it's almost like we shouldn't be friends. But for some, again, unspoken, out of our choices reason, we have to have that connection. It's meant to be, and I really don't think you could, really frame it any other way.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Mareya. My second time guest, which wholly unsurprising.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed every moment of this.
Me too. And to you at home, thank you so much for spending time with us, and thank you so much for being a good friend. Once again, I'm Noel, and this is Noel's Good Friend Show. Till next time.